Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Max from Splice, and today we're going to talk about some common bedroom studio setup mistakes. This is going to be a little bit of a personal video because, as you see, we are here in my home, and I'm going to use my own setup, which is full of plenty of these mistakes to demonstrate what not to do, and hopefully give you a little bit of an after picture as well, if I can summon up the courage to actually clean my room. So let's go ahead and get right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is a really big mistake, which is spending money for a really nice mic without any room treatment.
As you can see, this room is not really treated. There's a few soft things, like for example, the curtains, but the books back there don't really help too much, are a little reflective. You want absorptive material in your studio if you want to make it as dead as possible so you don't hear the reverberations from all the sound that you're making. However, that's not really possible for a lot of people, and it has not been possible for me so far, obviously. Although I would like to treat my room, it can get expensive to really effectively treat a room, or maybe it looks a little janky. For example, I've done stuff like put mattresses or blankets on the walls, which is fine, but just isn't something that I really feel like doing, especially in the middle of summer in New York. In the meantime, what I'm using is a dynamic mic instead of a condenser. A lot of condenser mics can get super expensive. I mean, so can dynamics, but dynamics tend to be a little bit cheaper. And the difference is they don't pick up so much around everywhere. Like condenser mics will capture in more detail everything that's going on, meaning that they will capture in more detail all the reverberations from your untreated room. So if you spend, a few $1,000s on a U87 or something like that just to have a really nice mic and record it in your untreated room, it's just not going to sound great. So I would recommend, instead of spending money on a nice mic, or not nice, but spending expensive money on a condenser mic that is going to capture huge detail, just get a dynamic instead. What I'm using here is a Bear Dynamic Soundstar Mark II, which I really love, but a Shure SM57 or SM58 will work beautifully, especially if you're recording vocals. Just to give you a little A-B, I'm just going to try turning on the Yeti and turning off the Bear Dynamic so that maybe you can hear the difference. Yeah, so this is what the Yeti sounds like. And as you can probably hear, you're hearing all the reverberations from my room. Even though maybe my voice sounds clear, it's going to sound boxy and strange because we're also getting all the reflections off of the walls. So again, this is with the nicer condenser, more expensive condenser. And then this is what it sounds like with the dynamic instead. So for me, the dynamic is a better choice, especially in an untreated room.
Okay, the next bedroom studio setup mistake that we're going to go over is your studio monitor setup. So a lot of people buy super nice studio monitors and either orient them wrong or aren't getting the most out of them. So we're going to talk about what to do so that you avoid that mistake. So just like with the expensive mics, it's probably not worth it to buy super expensive studio monitors for your bedroom setup. The reason being, you're not going to be able to use them in the way that they're intended if your room isn't treated, because they're going to be sending reverberations around the room and throw off what your song actually sounds like. You could produce on headphones to get around this, but it is just nice to have studio monitors, even if they're not perfectly accurate. So I, like a lot of other bedroom producers, use the KRK Rocket 5s. They're a really nice and budget-friendly option. I really have gotten used to them over the years. But in this shot here, I've set them up incorrectly. They're facing straight on, whereas I want them to be pointed at my head so that it maximizes the amount of actual signal that gets there and minimizes the amount of reverberation that hits my head coming back from the rest of the walls. So instead of orienting them flat on like this with stuff in front of it that's going to be blocking the signal coming out of it, one thing that I do is use these little foam guys. These are Oralex foam stands. And what I'm going to do is use them to prop up the speakers a little bit so that they're pointing more so at my head. And also I'm going to turn them in so that they form an isosceles triangle. So let's look at what that looks like. Okay, so what that is going to do is minimize the vibrations onto the desk from the speaker moving, and also point it up and point it at my head. so that I hear more of the signal and less of the reverberation, which is going to improve the performance of my studio monitors even without the room treatment. Okay, another big mistake that I've fallen prey to in my own home studio setup is leaving my desk cluttered and really messy. As you can see, there's tons of stuff on it, including some gum, this 3D printed blue dog, which actually is kind of cool. Probably worst of all, my Nintendo Switch. Don't leave your video games plugged in. It's just gonna kill your productivity. Please take it from me. I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. A really common issue that I see, and actually something that helped some of you on Facebook from the comments from my blog post on this, using balanced cables and unbalanced cables wrong. Let's talk about that.
Anyone who knows me knows that I'm obsessed with cables and wrapping them up nice and keeping them nice and organized. It just brings me joy. I feel like Marie Kondo anytime I like hang it perfectly on the little hook. But a lot of people have trouble differentiating between what's called balanced and unbalanced cables. This can actually cause a lot of big problems. For example, it can cause nasty like hums that sound like ground loops, or it can even ruin your recordings if you're using the wrong type of cable. So let me show you an unbalanced cable and a balanced cable. All right, can we see this? A balanced cable has 2 copies of the same signal, and it's insulated through something called common mode rejection, which we're not going to go into. But basically, it means that it insulates the cable against electrical interference. An unbalanced cable, on the other hand, does not have this extra insulation. So unbalanced is called TS for tip and ring, or sorry, tip and sleeve. And a balanced cable is called TRS for tip, ring, and sleeve. So you see how there's this extra line here? Basically, this shields the cable from electrical interference, while this does not have it. Unbalanced cables are less expensive. They're good for stuff like mono instrument signals. So like electric guitar is a really big example. Balanced cables, on the other hand, should be used anytime you're you're recording in stereo, or especially you want to use balanced cables from your interface to your speakers. So if you're running a cable from your interface to your speakers, make sure that it has this if it's a 1/4-inch cable. This will shield you from hum and get rid of a lot of nasty problems.
Okay, so those are some common home studio setup mistakes that hopefully you can avoid now that you've watched this video. Let me know what you think. If you have any other ideas for common mistakes that you have or any critiques of what I've got going on here, I welcome them. So thanks for watching, and enjoy producing in your house.